I was sitting at the kitchen table when my wife brought it up again. We'd been talking about replacing my car for months. The engine rattled every time I started it, and the check engine light had become a permanent fixture on my dashboard. I'd been driving it for 12 years. "David, we just can't afford it right now," she said, not even looking up from her phone. "We need to be smart about money." I nodded. I always nodded. She handled the finances. She always had. Emily was better with numbers, she'd told me early in our marriage. It made sense to let her manage everything. I trusted her completely. "I understand," I said. "Maybe next year." "Maybe," she replied, her thumb scrolling across her screen. I went back to my coffee, trying not to think about the embarrassment I'd felt last week when my car died in the grocery store parking lot. A younger guy had to help me jump it while people watched. At 53, I felt like I should have my life more together than this. That evening, I needed to order something online. My phone was charging upstairs, so I picked up Emily's from the counter. She'd left it unlocked. I wasn't snooping. I had no reason to snoop. We'd been married for 28 years. I opened her browser to type in the website, and that's when I saw her Venmo was still logged in. The screen showed her recent transactions. I almost put the phone down. Almost. But something made me look. $650 to Jennifer, her sister. The note said, "June rent." I scrolled down. $650 to Jennifer, May, same note. April, March, February, January. I kept scrolling. The payments went back 2 years, 24 months. $650 every single month. My chest felt tight. I set the phone down carefully, exactly where I'd found it, and walked outside to the garage. I sat in my dying car and stared at the oil stain on the concrete floor. $650 a month for 2 years. That was $15,600. Jennifer lived in Portland. We lived in Ohio. What rent was my wife paying? I didn't sleep that night. Emily snored softly beside me while I lay there doing math in my head. I thought about every time she'd said we couldn't afford something, the vacation I'd wanted to take for our anniversary, the new laptop I'd asked about when mine started freezing constantly, the car, always the car. "We need to save, David. We're not getting any younger. We need to think about retirement." I'd believed her. Why wouldn't I? She was my wife. She managed our money. She'd never given me a reason not to trust her. The next morning, I made breakfast like I always did. Emily came downstairs in her robe, poured herself coffee, and kissed my cheek. "Sleep okay?" she asked. "Fine," I lied. She had no idea I knew. Her face showed nothing but casual affection and the mild tiredness of a Thursday morning. I watched her scroll through her phone while she ate the eggs I'd made, and I wondered how long she'd been comfortable lying to me. I needed to understand what I was looking at before I said anything. Maybe there was an explanation. Maybe Jennifer was in trouble and Emily was helping her secretly because she knew I'd object. Maybe it was a loan that Jennifer was paying back somehow. I wanted there to be a reason that made sense. That afternoon I called my brother. Tom was a CPA, practical and thorough about everything. We hadn't talked much since Dad's funeral, just the occasional text on birthdays. "I need some advice," I said, "about money, about accounts." "What's going on?" he asked. "How would I see our bank statements? Like all of them?" There was a pause. "David, you're on the accounts, aren't you?" "Emily handles all of that," I said. Another pause, longer this time. "You don't have access to your own bank accounts?" "She's just better at managing money than I am," I said, hearing how weak it sounded out loud. Tom's voice changed, became more careful. "Dave, you're a grown man with a job. You should be able to see your own money. That's not about who's better at math. That's basic." "I trust her," I said. "I know you do," he said. "But trust should go both ways. If she's got nothing to hide, she won't mind you looking. You're married. It's your money, too." After we hung up, I sat in my car outside the grocery store where I'd pretended to go. I wasn't ready to go home yet. Tom's words stayed with me. I'd never thought about it the way he'd framed it. Emily didn't hide the accounts from me exactly. She just handled them. I never asked to see anything because I never felt I needed to, but now I needed to. That evening, I waited until Emily was in the shower. I opened her laptop. She'd never password protected it around the house. Why would she? I was her husband. I found her login information saved in the browser. Our joint checking account came up first. The balance was lower than I expected, much lower. We both worked full time. We should have had more saved than this. I looked at the recent transactions. $650 to Jennifer, like clockwork. First of every month, but there was more. Shopping I didn't recognize. Restaurants we hadn't been to together. A charge from a spa in Columbus that I'd never heard Emily mention. She'd told me last month we couldn't afford to fix the fence, but here was $300 spent at some boutique I couldn't pronounce. I heard the water shut off upstairs. I closed the laptop and went to the living room, turned on the TV, made it look like I'd been there the whole time. Emily came down in her pajamas, her hair wrapped in a towel. "What are you watching?" "Nothing really," I said. "Just flipping." She settled onto the couch beside me and leaned her head on my shoulder. The gesture that used to comfort me now made my skin crawl. I kept my eyes on the television and tried to keep breathing normally. Over the next few days, I started noticing things I'd somehow missed before. Emily's new purse that she'd had for months but that I'd never thought about. She'd always loved nice things, but we were supposed to be saving. The jewelry she wore to work, the expensive face creams in the bathroom, none of it was dramatic. None of it was shocking by itself. But together with those monthly payments to her sister, it painted a picture I didn't want to see. I thought about our marriage. 28 years. We'd built a life together, raised 2 kids who were now adults with their own lives. I'd always thought we were happy. Not passionate anymore maybe, but comfortable, stable. I'd worked at the same manufacturing plant for 30 years. I'd never made great money, but it was steady. Emily worked as an office manager. Between us, we'd always had enough. Or so I'd thought. But if I'd been driving the same car for 12 years while Emily bought $300 worth of clothes in a single shopping trip, what did that say about how she saw our partnership? I began paying attention to her phone habits, how she tilted the screen away from me when texts came in, how she sometimes went to the bedroom to take calls. I'd never noticed before, because I'd never had a reason to look. One evening, about a week after I'd first seen the Venmo transactions, Emily mentioned her sister. "Jennifer's having a hard time," she said over dinner. "Her landlord raised her rent again." I almost said it then. Almost asked how much she was paying. Instead, I just nodded and said, "That's tough." "She's looking for a new place," Emily continued, "but Portland is so expensive." I cut my chicken and stayed quiet. I wanted to see where she'd take this. "I told her we'd help if she needed anything," Emily said. "Help how?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. She shrugged. "I don't know. Just moral support, I guess. We're not exactly in a position to give her money." There it was. She'd looked me in the eye and lied. Easily, casually, like it cost her nothing. I excused myself and went to the garage. I sat in my car again, the one I couldn't replace because we couldn't afford it, and I let myself feel the anger I'd been pushing down. $5,600 to her sister, while telling me we needed to save, while telling me we couldn't afford basic things. I thought about confronting her that night, laying out everything I'd found and demanding an explanation. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the casual way she'd just lied to my face. Maybe it was the realization that this wasn't new, that she'd been comfortable doing this for at least 2 years. If I confronted her now, she'd have an explanation ready. She'd make me feel guilty for checking the accounts, for not trusting her. She'd turn this around somehow, and I'd end up apologizing. I'd seen her do it before with other things, smaller things. She had a way of making you feel like you were the one being unreasonable. So I didn't say anything, not yet. Instead, I started documenting. I took photos of the Venmo transactions on my phone when Emily was at work. I logged into the bank account again and took screenshots. I created a folder on my laptop, hidden in a random directory she'd never look at. I wanted to understand the full picture before I decided what to do. The next weekend, I told Emily I needed to visit Tom. She barely looked up from her magazine. "Okay," she said. "Tell him I said hi." Tom lived an hour away. I'd called ahead and told him I needed to talk in person. We sat in his kitchen, and I showed him everything on my phone: the Venmo payments, the bank statements, the pattern of expenses that Emily kept hidden. Tom stared at the screen for a long time. "Jesus, Dave, is there a legitimate reason she'd do this?" I asked. "Something I'm not seeing?" He scrolled through the images, his jaw tight. "Did Jennifer have some kind of emergency 2 years ago? Medical bills, legal problems?" "Not that I know of," I said. "She has never mentioned anything." "And Emily never asked you about helping her?" "Never." Tom set my phone down and looked at me. "Dave, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I will tell you this. You need to protect yourself financially. Right now. Today." "What do you mean?" "I mean Emily has access to all your money, everything you've worked for. If she's been comfortable lying about this much for this long, who knows what else she's comfortable with?" The thought hadn't fully formed in my mind until he said it out loud. But he was right. Emily controlled everything. The bank accounts, the retirement funds, the house. I'd signed papers over the years without really reading them, trusting her to handle it all. "What should I do?" I asked. Tom pulled out a notepad. "First, you need to get your name on new accounts. Open a separate checking account at a different bank. Start having your paycheck deposited there. Do it Monday. Won't she notice? Eventually, but by then, you'll have some security. Second, you need to get copies of every financial document you can. Bank statements, tax returns, retirement accounts, everything. Get it all." "And then what?" "Then you talk to a lawyer. Not to file for divorce necessarily, but to know your options, to know what you're dealing with." I drove home that afternoon feeling like I'd aged 10 years. The house I pulled up to looked the same as always. The garden Emily tended, the porch I'd repaired last summer, the life we'd built together. But something had shifted. I couldn't unsee what I'd seen. I couldn't unfeel the betrayal. Emily was in the kitchen when I came in. She'd made pot roast, my favorite. The smell would have comforted me a week ago. Now it just felt like set dressing for a lie. "How's Tom?" she asked, kissing my cheek. "Good," I said. "Same as always. We ate dinner. We talked about her day at work, about a problem with the HOA, about what we should watch on TV later. Normal conversation, comfortable routine. She had no idea everything had changed. On Monday, I went to a different bank during my lunch break. I opened a checking account with just my name. The process took 30 minutes. I arranged for my next paycheck to be deposited there instead of the joint account. The woman helping me asked if I wanted to set up overdraft protection linked to another account. "No," I said. "Keep it separate." She gave me a look that suggested she understood more than I'd said, but she just nodded and processed the paperwork. That evening, while Emily was at her book club, I went through our home office. I found the file cabinet where she kept our tax returns. I made copies of everything, 7 years of returns. I found the folder with our retirement account statements, copied all of those too. I found our mortgage papers, the deed to the house, our car titles. Everything was in both our names. At least there was that. But I also found a credit card statement I'd never seen before, in Emily's name only. The balance was $8,000, charges for things I didn't recognize, restaurants in Columbus, which was an hour away, hotel stays I knew nothing about. I sat on the floor of the office and stared at the paper. The dates went back 6 months. She'd been making regular trips to Columbus and charging everything to a card I didn't know existed. My hands shook as I made copies of those statements too. I thought about Jennifer in Portland, about the rent payments, about the lies Emily had told me for 2 years at minimum, maybe longer. I thought about the hotel charges and felt something crack in my chest. I put everything back exactly as I'd found it. I hid my copies in my car, in the spare tire well, where Emily would never look. When she came home from book club, I was watching TV like nothing had happened. "How was it?" I asked. "Good," she said, dropping her purse on the counter. "We're reading this new thriller everyone's obsessed with. Kind of predictable, honestly." She sat next to me and started scrolling through her phone. I watched her from the corner of my eye. She looked relaxed, content. No guilt on her face, no hesitation. 2 days later, I called a lawyer. Tom had recommended someone he knew, a woman named Patricia Chen, who specialized in family law. I met her at her office after work. She was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with short hair and glasses that made her look both professional and approachable. I showed her everything: the Venmo payments, the bank statements, the credit card bills with the hotel charges. She reviewed it all carefully, making notes on a legal pad. "Mr. Harrison," she said finally, "I need to ask you something directly. What do you want to happen here?" "I don't know," I admitted. "I just need to understand what I'm looking at." "What you're looking at is financial infidelity," she said. "Your wife has been diverting marital assets for personal use and lying about it. The hotel charges suggest there may be more going on." I'd been avoiding that thought. I'd been telling myself the hotel charges were explainable somehow. Maybe Jennifer visited, and they stayed in Columbus for shopping. Maybe there was some reason I just hadn't figured out yet. "I don't have proof of anything except the money," I said. "The money is enough," Patricia said. "In a divorce, this kind of financial behavior matters, but I'm getting ahead of things. You came here for information, not to file. So let me give you information." She explained how asset division worked in Ohio, how debt would be split, how my retirement funds were marital property just like hers, how the house would likely need to be sold or refinanced. "The fact that you're just now securing your own accounts is good," she said, "but you should have done it sooner. If she drains the joint account tomorrow, it gets complicated." "Can she do that?" I asked. "Just take everything?" "It's a joint account. She has every legal right to withdraw whatever she wants, just like you do." I felt sick. "My advice," Patricia continued, "is that you keep documenting, keep your own money separate, and decide what you want your life to look like. Then we can talk about steps. But David, I need you to be honest with yourself about something." "What?" "You don't trust her anymore. Whether you stay married or not, that's not coming back. So you need to figure out what a life looks like where you're protecting yourself from your own wife." I thanked her and left. I sat in my car in the parking garage for 20 minutes before I could drive. She was right. I didn't trust Emily. I'd been sleeping next to her every night, eating meals with her, going through the motions of our life together, and every moment felt like a performance now. I thought about the young man I'd been at 25, marrying Emily in a small church with our families watching. How certain I'd been that we'd figured out life together. How naive I'd been. At home that evening, Emily was making dinner. She smiled when I walked in. "Good day?" she asked. "Long," I said. "How about you?" "Same. The printer at work broke again. I swear they buy the cheapest possible equipment and then act surprised when it falls apart." I made appropriate sympathetic noises and went to change clothes. In the bedroom, I looked at the photos on the dresser, our wedding, our kids as children, family vacations to places we'd saved for, or at least I thought we had. Everything felt tainted now. Over the next few weeks, I fell into a strange routine. I worked, came home, had dinner with Emily, watched TV, went to bed. On the surface, nothing had changed. But I was documenting everything, every expense, every conversation about money, every time she mentioned her sister. I noticed she'd stopped talking about Jennifer as much. Maybe she sensed something, some change in me I wasn't aware of showing. My paychecks were going to my new account. I'd moved about $3,000 there so far. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Emily hadn't said anything about the missing deposits yet, but she would eventually. I rehearsed conversations in my head, what I'd say when she noticed, how I'd explain it, but the right words never came. One Saturday morning, Emily announced she was driving to Columbus to meet a friend. "I'll be back this evening," she said, grabbing her purse. "Which friend?" I asked casually. "Lisa from work. We're going to do some shopping, maybe get lunch." "Sounds nice," I said. She kissed my forehead and left. I waited until her car was gone, then I checked the credit card statement I'd been monitoring online. I'd memorized her login information. 2 hours later, a charge appeared. $87 at a restaurant in Columbus. 20 minutes after that, $156 at a hotel at 1 in the afternoon. I sat staring at my laptop screen at the cold proof of what I'd been avoiding. My wife was having an affair. The money to her sister was probably just Emily covering her tracks, creating expenses that seemed explainable. I thought about calling Tom. I thought about calling Patricia. Instead, I just sat there in the quiet house we'd shared for almost 3 decades and let myself finally feel the full weight of it. She came home at 8 that evening, carrying shopping bags. "How was it?" I asked. "Great," she said, smiling. "I found this amazing little boutique. Look what I got." She showed me a scarf. It was pretty. I told her so. "How much?" I asked. "Oh, it was on sale," she said, waving a hand. "I shouldn't have, I know, but I never buy myself anything nice." The scarf had cost $120 according to the charge I'd seen, plus the hotel, plus the restaurant, all on the credit card I wasn't supposed to know about. "You deserve nice things," I said, and meant it in a way she wouldn't understand. That night I lay awake again. Emily snored softly beside me. I thought about confronting her, about asking her directly who she'd really been with in Columbus, who she'd been seeing for months. But I didn't want to hear the lie she'd tell. I didn't want to watch her rearrange her face into confused innocence, didn't want to hear her make me feel crazy for asking. I already knew the truth. I didn't need her version of it. The next morning, I called Patricia again. "I have more information," I said. "Come in Monday," she replied. Monday afternoon, I showed her the hotel charges, the pattern of trips to Columbus, the timing of when Emily said she was meeting friends versus when charges appeared on the card. Patricia reviewed everything with the same careful attention as before. "Do you want to know who?" she asked. "Who she's seeing?" "Yes, I can hire an investigator. They're discreet, professional. We'd have definitive proof within a couple of weeks." I thought about it. About having photos, evidence, concrete proof to show Emily and force her to admit what she'd been doing. "No," I said finally. "I don't need to know who. I just need to know I can leave." "You can leave," Patricia said. "With these financials, with the evidence of her diverting marital funds, we can build a strong case. But David, it's going to get ugly. She's going to fight. People who are comfortable lying usually are." "I know," I said. "There's something else you should consider," Patricia continued. "You've been the primary earner, correct? Your manufacturing job pays more than her office position?" "Yes." "In Ohio, that means you'd likely owe spousal support, not forever, but for a period of time, given how long you've been married, probably several years. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd be paying Emily money even after the divorce, even though she'd been stealing from us and lying to me for years." "How much?" I asked. She did some quick calculations. "Ballpark? Maybe $1,500 a month for 5 to 7 years. It depends on a lot of factors." I sat back in the chair. $500 a month, on top of splitting our assets, on top of losing the house I'd lived in for 20 years. "Is it worth it?" I asked. "Financially, I mean." Patricia's expression softened. "That's not a question I can answer for you. Only you know what your peace of mind is worth." I drove home thinking about that, about peace, about what it would feel like to stop lying to myself, to stop pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. That evening, Emily asked if I wanted to watch a movie. We sat on opposite ends of the couch, and I realized we'd been doing that for months, maybe years. When had we stopped sitting close? When had casual affection become an effort? I looked at her in the glow of the TV and tried to remember the last time I had felt genuinely connected to her. Not just comfortable, not just familiar, but actually connected. I couldn't remember. Maybe the affair, if that's what it was, hadn't broken us. Maybe we'd been broken for a long time, and I'd just been too comfortable to notice. The next week, I made a decision. I met with Patricia again and told her I wanted to move forward. Not immediately, but I wanted to start preparing. I wanted all the documentation ready, all the paperwork filed. I wanted everything in place so that when I was ready, I could simply execute the plan. Smart, she said. But David, there's one thing you need to decide first. What? Do you want to tell her you know about the affair, or just file based on financial grounds? I hadn't thought about that, about whether Emily deserved to know that I knew, whether she deserved the chance to explain, even though any explanation would be a lie. Just financial grounds, I said. The affair doesn't matter legally, does it? Ohio is a no-fault state. It can matter for asset division, but it's not required. We can file on grounds of incompatibility and build the case around financial misconduct. Then let's do that, she nodded. It'll take a few weeks to prepare everything. In the meantime, secure anything valuable that's solely yours. Photos, family heirlooms, anything that matters to you personally. Move it to a safe location. Like where? A storage unit, maybe, or your brother's house, somewhere she can't access if things get contentious. I spent that weekend going through the house when Emily was at work. I found the watch my father had given me, the photo albums from my childhood, my grandmother's Bible. Small things, but things that mattered. I took them to Tom's house. He didn't ask questions, just helped me carry everything to his spare bedroom. "You doing okay?" he asked when we were done. "No," I said honestly, "but I will be." 3 weeks later, Patricia called me at work. "Everything's ready," she said. "Whenever you want to move forward, just say the word." I thanked her and hung up. I sat in my car during lunch break and thought about the man I'd been a month ago, driving this same dying car, trusting my wife, believing the life we'd built was solid. That man was gone. I'd never be that naive again, but I was also stronger than I'd been. I'd learned I could survive discovering the worst. I could function while everything I'd believed was crumbling. I could plan, could think strategically, could protect myself. Emily had taught me that, not on purpose, but she'd taught me anyway. That evening I came home and found Emily in the kitchen. She was stirring something on the stove, humming to herself. "Hey," she said when she saw me. "Dinner's almost ready." "Smells good," I said. "I was thinking we could plan a trip," she said. "Maybe this fall. We haven't gone anywhere in so long." "Where would you want to go?" I asked. "I don't know. Somewhere different. Maybe the coast." I watched her standing there, suggesting a vacation, acting like everything was normal, like she wasn't stealing from us, like she wasn't lying to my face, like she hadn't been betraying me for years. And I realized I was done, not angry anymore, not hurt, just done. "Emily," I said quietly. She turned to look at me. "Yeah?" I held her gaze for a long moment. She looked confused, then concerned. "David, what's wrong?" "I'll be right back," I said. "I need to make a call." I went to the bedroom and called Patricia. "Do it," I said. "File everything tomorrow." "Are you sure?" she asked. "I'm sure." The next morning I went to work like normal. At 10:30, Patricia texted me, "Filed. She'll be served at her office around 2 p.m. I sat at my desk and tried to focus on work. The hours crawled past. I imagined Emily at her office, being handed papers by a process server. I imagined her reading them, her face going pale. I imagined her calling me. My phone rang at 2:47 p.m. Emily's name lit up the screen. I didn't answer. She called 6 more times. I ignored all of them. At 5, I drove to Tom's house instead of going home. I'd packed a bag that morning before work and left it in my car. "You did it," Tom said when he opened the door. "I did it. How do you feel?" I sat down on his couch and let out a long breath. I feel like I can breathe for the first time in months. My phone buzzed constantly with texts from Emily. I finally looked at them around 8 that evening. The first few were confused. "What is this? Why are you doing this?" Then angry. "You don't get to just abandon me. We need to talk about this." Then desperate. "Please call me. Let me explain. This is all a misunderstanding." I turned my phone off. Over the next few weeks, the divorce process moved forward. Emily hired a lawyer, an aggressive man who sent threatening letters about what Emily was entitled to. Patricia handled everything calmly, responding with documentation of every Venmo payment, every hidden credit card charge, every lie. Emily's lawyer's tone changed after that. I moved into a small apartment. Tom helped me move the few things I'd taken from the house. I bought a used couch from Facebook Marketplace and a coffee maker from Target. The apartment was quiet and empty, but it was mine. Emily kept calling. I kept not answering. Through the lawyers, she demanded we meet to discuss things like adults. Patricia advised against it. I agreed. Everything could be handled through lawyers. That's what lawyers were for. The divorce took 7 months to finalize. Longer than I'd hoped, but Patricia said we'd done well. The house was sold. Emily got half the proceeds, but I wasn't ordered to pay as much spousal support as we'd feared. The judge had read the financial documents and apparently formed his own opinion about Emily's claims of financial hardship. My retirement accounts were split, but I'd protected enough that I could still plan for an actual retirement someday. On the day the divorce was final, I bought myself something I'd wanted for years. Not a new car, not yet. Just something small. A nice watch to replace the cheap one I'd been wearing. It cost $200, and I didn't have to ask anyone's permission. I wore it to work the next day. One of my coworkers noticed. "Nice watch," he said. "Thanks," I said. "I just got it." Special occasion? I thought about the question, about the last 7 months, about the life I'd discovered I was living without knowing it, and the life I was building now. "Something like that," I said. "I don't know what happened to Emily after everything was final. I heard through mutual friends that she moved in with her sister in Portland. Maybe that's where the money was really going all along. Maybe Jennifer knew about everything. Maybe she didn't. It doesn't matter anymore. I still drive my old car, the one that rattles and has the permanent check engine light. But I'm saving now, actually saving, for a replacement. Maybe next year, maybe the year after. The difference is I'm the only one deciding. I know exactly where my money is. I know exactly what I can afford and what I can't. I know when someone is lying to me now. I can see it in their eyes, in the casual way they tilt their screens away, in the easy confidence of their deception. I'll never be that trusting again. Maybe that's sad, maybe it's just smart. But I'm free. I wake up in my small apartment with my second-hand furniture and my coffee maker from Target, and I feel lighter than I have in years. I don't have to wonder anymore. I don't have to pretend. I don't have to make myself small to fit someone else's narrative of our life together. I just have to be me, alone, but finally honest. And that turns out to be enough. Character count, 250847. I need to expand this significantly to meet the 35,000, 40,000 character requirement. I'll continue the story with deeper emotional processing, more detailed silent strategy, and additional scenes showing the normalized cruelty. I was making breakfast, just eggs and toast, and I accidentally dropped the spatula. It clattered loudly on the floor. I flinched, waiting for the comment, the sigh, the look that said I couldn't do anything right. But there was no one there to give me that look, no one to make me feel incompetent for a simple mistake. I picked up the spatula, washed it off, and kept cooking. That's when I understood how much of my life had been spent anticipating Emily's reactions, adjusting my behavior to avoid her subtle disapproval. It wasn't always obvious. She never yelled. She just had ways of making you feel small without using loud words. I thought about all the times I'd wanted to buy something and talked myself out of it before even asking. The hobby I'd given up because she'd made comments about how much space my equipment took up. The friends I'd slowly stopped seeing because Emily always had a reason why that particular weekend didn't work. I'd shrunk myself to fit her version of who I should be, and I hadn't even noticed I was doing it. The apartment became my space to figure out who I was without someone constantly reshaping me. I bought a guitar. I'd played in high school but sold it years ago when Emily said she couldn't stand the noise. The guitar sat in my living room now, and I practiced badly for 30 minutes every evening. No one complained. No one sighed dramatically from another room. I joined a gym, not because I needed to lose weight or because someone suggested I should, but because I wanted to. I went 3 mornings a week before work and felt better for it. These weren't dramatic changes. I wasn't becoming a different person. I was just becoming myself again, the version that had been buried under years of small compromises. At work, people started noticing something different about me. I couldn't say exactly what it was. Maybe I stood straighter. Maybe I spoke up more in meetings. My supervisor mentioned I seemed more engaged lately. "Everything okay at home?" he asked one day. "Actually, yes," I said. "Everything's better than it's been in a long time." He looked confused, like that wasn't the answer he'd expected, but he nodded and moved on. I kept my new life small and simple. I didn't date. The idea of trusting someone like that again made my stomach hurt. Maybe someday, but not yet. For now, I needed to remember how to trust myself. I'd catch myself sometimes, about to make a decision, and I'd pause and ask, is this what I actually want, or is this what I think I should want? The question was harder to answer than it should have been. I thought about my kids during this time. Sarah and Michael were both adults now, building their own lives. Sarah had called when she heard about the divorce. She'd been upset, confused. She wanted to know what had happened, why I'd left her mother. "It's complicated," I'd said, which was both true and inadequate. "Did you have an affair?" she'd asked bluntly. "No," I said, "I didn't. This was about other things, financial things, trust things." "Mom says you just gave up on the marriage," Sarah said. "She says you wouldn't even try to work things out." I'd stayed quiet. I could have told her about the Venmo payments, about the hotel charges, about the years of lies. But she was Emily's daughter, too. She didn't need to carry that weight. "I'm sorry you're caught in the middle," I said instead. "I love you. That hasn't changed." She'd softened a little at that. We'd talked for another hour, carefully avoiding the details that would hurt too much to say out loud. Michael had been quieter about the whole thing. He'd sent a text, "Here if you need me, Dad." That was it. No questions, no judgment. Maybe he understood more than Sarah did, or maybe he just didn't want to know. I missed them both, but I also understood that they were processing this in their own ways. I couldn't control their relationship with Emily or what she told them. I could only control how I showed up for them going forward. I made a point to text them weekly. Nothing heavy, just checking in. Sometimes they responded right away. Sometimes it took days. I didn't push. One Saturday afternoon, Michael showed up at my apartment unannounced. He was carrying a 6-pack of beer and looking uncomfortable. "Thought you might want company," he said. We sat on my cheap couch and drank beer and watched a baseball game on TV. We didn't talk about the divorce. We didn't talk about Emily. We just sat there together, and it was enough. "This place isn't bad," Michael said eventually. "It's small," I admitted. "Small's not always bad," he said. "Easier to keep clean." I smiled. That's true. He stayed for 3 hours. When he left, he hugged me at the door, awkward but genuine. "You seem okay, Dad," he said. "That's good." After he left, I sat in the quiet apartment and felt grateful. Not for the divorce, not for the pain that had brought me here, but for the clarity, for the chance to rebuild something honest. I thought about Emily sometimes, more than I wanted to admit. I wondered if she ever thought about what she'd done, if she ever felt guilty about the lies. I doubted it. People who are comfortable lying usually find ways to justify it to themselves. I wondered if she was still with whoever she'd been seeing in Columbus, if they were happy together, if she'd eventually do to them what she'd done to me. Mostly, though, I tried not to wonder. She was part of my past now, and my past was something I was learning to let go of. I drove past our old house once, about 4 months after moving out. The new owners had painted the shutters blue. Emily had always wanted to do that, but I'd said we couldn't afford it. Apparently, the new people could. I didn't feel sad seeing it. The house was just a building. It wasn't my home anymore. Home was the apartment with the cheap couch and the guitar and the quiet space where I could breathe without wondering if I was doing something wrong. At work one day, a colleague asked if I wanted to grab lunch. Her name was Susan, and she'd been with the company for about 5 years. We'd always been friendly, but never really talked much outside of work stuff. "Sure," I said. We went to a sandwich place down the street. We talked about work, about the weather, about nothing important. It was easy, comfortable. "Can I ask you something personal?" she said as we were finishing up. I tensed slightly. "Okay." "You got divorced recently, right?" "I did." "Do you regret it?" I thought about the question, about Emily, about the years we'd spent together, about the life I'd thought we were building. "No," I said. "I regret what led to it, but not the divorce itself." She nodded like she understood. "My ex-husband cheated on me. Everyone kept telling me I should try to work it out, that marriage is hard and you have to fight for it. But I didn't want to fight anymore. I just wanted peace." "Did you find it?" I asked. "Eventually," she said. "Took a while, though. Took learning how to be okay alone." "I'm working on that," I said. "You seem like you're doing well," she said. We talked for another 20 minutes, then headed back to work. That evening, I thought about what she'd said, about learning to be okay alone, about how peace was worth fighting for, even if the fight meant walking away. I thought I was starting to understand that now. The months passed. Fall turned to winter. I bought a small Christmas tree for the apartment and decorated it with cheap ornaments from Target. It looked nothing like the elaborate tree Emily used to insist on, the one that took hours to decorate and cost a fortune. But it was mine, and I liked it. I spent Christmas Day with Tom and his family. His kids were young, loud, and chaotic in the way kids are. Tom's wife, Angela, made a huge meal and insisted I take home leftovers. "You're too skinny," she said, loading me down with containers of food. "I'm eating fine," I said. "Bachelor food doesn't count," she replied. "Real food. That's what you need." I hugged her and meant it. Tom had always been just my brother, but that day I realized Angela was family too. She'd never asked intrusive questions about the divorce. She'd just quietly made space for me in their lives and treated me like I belonged. Sarah called on Christmas evening. She was at Emily's new place in Portland. "Merry Christmas, Dad," she said. "Merry Christmas, sweetheart." "Are you alone?" "I was with Uncle Tom and his family today," I said. "It was nice." "Good," she said. There was a pause. "Mom's having a hard time." I didn't know what to say to that, so I didn't say anything. "She misses you," Sarah continued. "Sarah," I said gently, "I know this is hard for you, but your mom and I are done. That's not going to change." "I know," she said quietly. "I just wish things were different." "Me too," I said, "but they're not." We talked for a few more minutes, then said goodbye. I sat looking at my little Christmas tree and felt the weight of what I'd lost and what I'd gained. The house, the history, the comfortable illusion of a stable marriage. All gone. But in their place, honesty, autonomy, peace. It was a trade I'd never wanted to make, but now that I had, I couldn't imagine going back. By February, I'd saved enough to finally start seriously looking at cars. Nothing fancy, just something reliable. Something that wouldn't leave me stranded in parking lots. I test drove a 3-year-old Honda. It was clean, low mileage, well maintained. The price was fair. I bought it without asking anyone's opinion. I signed the paperwork transferred the money from my account, and drove it home. It was the first major purchase I'd made in years that was entirely my own decision. No negotiations, no justifications, no asking if we could afford it. I could afford it. I knew exactly what was in my account, exactly what I could spend, exactly what I needed to save. I parked the car in front of my apartment building and just sat there for a minute, hands on the steering wheel of a car that was completely mine. Such a small thing, such a normal thing, but it felt like victory. That evening, I took my new car for a drive with nowhere particular to go. I drove through the city, out to the suburbs, past the old house where Emily and I had lived. I drove past my kids' old schools, past the restaurant where Emily and I had our rehearsal dinner 28 years ago, past all the landmarks of a life I didn't live anymore. Then I drove back to my apartment, parked my new car, and went inside to the small space that was completely, honestly, mine. I made dinner, practiced guitar badly for 30 minutes, read a book, went to bed early. A simple evening, a quiet life. But it was true. No lies, no pretending, no wondering what was being hidden from me. Just the truth, simple and plain. And I'd learned that truth, even when it's hard, is always better than comfortable lies. Always.